And we are off. It's off to our second presentation with Caringo. And we have Adrian Herrera, Vice President of Marketing. And he's going to be talking to us about using object storage to reduce latency and enable content distribution and delivery. Very timely topic. And at the end of it, one of you will get this lovely extra bass headphones. So, Adrian, go ahead.
Thanks, Troy. So, 20 minutes of hearing about object storage, and you get a lifetime of music in your ear, wireless, so it works with the new iPhone. You don't have to buy another dongle. I want to take a quick poll of the room. How many of you are on the content delivery side or content production side? And then how many of you work on the admin side, like infrastructure or development of web apps? Okay, good. So it's about evenly split. And how many of you have heard of object storage? All right. So we're going to be talking about reducing latency and enabling content distribution and delivery. I'm the VP of Marketing. I don't have a traditional IT background. I actually started off in the media space on the video and audio encoding side. I worked for some music streaming organizations, download organizations, also worked for Yahoo Media, and then I made my way into the storage side. So I've kind of been where you are from the media delivery perspective, service delivery perspective, so understand the user experience and also the IT side, and I'll be layering some of my experiences as we're going through the presentation. So overall, this is what we believe at Caringo. You now need to provide long-term storage and instant access to all content. Just on the drive over here, I heard about ESPN losing subscribers. Did anyone hear about that? They lost 600,000 subscribers in the last quarter. So, what does that tell you as content producers? It tells you that the delivery of content, the mechanisms are changing. Broadcast media is changing. People want to view content on their own terms, wherever they are, and on any device that they have. And you all need to figure out how to do that in a very cost-effective way. And it really is changing from this creating one piece of content, broadcasting to millions, to creating many pieces of content and broadcasting it to few on their devices wherever they are. And we believe this at Caringo, and this is what we develop our technology to solve this issue. Companies that do this well. Facebook does this really well. Netflix does this really well. Match does this really well. Two of these are actually Caringo customers. Can't tell you which two, but these organizations have built businesses on taking content that's created by few people and delivering it to few others, but on a grand scale. Netflix, arguably, they do broadcast single very popular content to millions of people, but a lot of their catalog is long tail catalog, back catalog, and Match is obviously doing user-generated content, photos, and that kind of thing, but to millions of users, more one-to-one, one-to-few. The common thread across all these, object storage. Object storage should be seen as a very strategic technology. It's the foundation that you can build a content delivery platform on. It's, storage is almost a misnomer. It's unfortunate that it started off being called object storage because it does so much more. And even if you take a look at Amazon Web Services, how did they get started? They put Amazon S3 into the market. That was their first product that they put into the market to get everyone comfortable working with APIs and working with web services. And at Caringo, we have one of the most mature and popular object storage software applications out there. We also now have a hardware appliance. But providing economical storage is just step one. We can cut costs up to 75% for long-term storage of content. That's just the beginning. With our object storage solution, our platform, web traffic is already HTTP based. We speak HTTP. It's a RESTful interface. You can use the HTTP 1.1 libraries to interface with our software, with our hardware. Streaming is enabled through range reads. So we inherently support video streaming, HTML5 streaming, all the different types of streaming that you want to do is handled directly from the storage. So that means your content producers can write to the storage, your viewers can access the same storage. You're not going through multiple layers. You're not going through different services, different content delivery services. many users, many parallel sessions. So this is really important. In the world of mobile devices and user-generated content, you just don't know what's going to be hot or not. You need to have infrastructure that can scale quickly. But with storage, it's a little different than compute. You can usually forecast usage, but you still need to be able to replicate that hot content and be able to deliver it effectively. Because as we'll see in a bit, with freemium and ad-based models, latency is incredibly important. And then built-in content management protection. So, when you think about storage, a lot of the times you think about, okay, the content's protected, but you don't really think about content management. In this world of storing everything that people create, you need to think about new ways to manage the content. Do you want to continue to pay your asset management solutions to do this? Can you look for more efficient, cost-effective ways to do this? We have one of the largest retailers in Germany using us, and they use us to host their photos. They have a seasonal business, and they load all of their photos for winter, and they automatically set policies to delete those photos after the season's over. That way, they don't have to worry about going and finding the files and deleting them. They're just automatically managed and taken care of for them. It's actually a team of developers that found themselves in charge of providing storage, and they now need to manage storage infrastructure. And we're seeing that more often. Now, it's not necessarily your traditional IT that has to stand up storage and provide delivery. It's more product management, developers. Those are now the people who are in charge of managing storage and really protecting content, providing long-term storage for content. So here's a typical content delivery diagram, very simplified, but here you have your web server, your video on demand server, your caching proxy. Let's say you're using Nginx, Varnish, something like that. You have your app server, you have your database, and then underneath there's a layer of media enabling technologies, media web server, media access app, an additional database to store all of the media content. Let's use a dating site, for example. This is like, what's their sign, what's their hair color, eye color, what are their answers or responses to all the questions that they've applied to or put in their profile. And this is pretty challenging to protect for a lot of organizations. Once they get to a certain scale, especially this database issue here, we find that people are not so much struggling with what to store or the capacity of their databases. It's actually protecting the database. When they need to provide consistent service, it's making this redundant. Protecting this across sites is a real issue. Now, here it is with Swarm. So as I mentioned, it does much more than just storage. We can go in and we can collapse this database. You still need the app database up here, but we can collapse the media data database. Why? Because we store metadata with the content itself, and we protect it just like we do the content. The media access app is now gone because you can talk, this app server can now talk directly to the storage. It just requests a specific URL, and it's delivered. That's all you need to do. And we also collapse the media web server because web serving is built into most object storage solutions. So you collapse this entire tier of infrastructure. And what we're really doing is, we eliminate all these different tiers. We're creating one tier of infrastructure to scale. So, arguably, it's not just the end user experience you need to think about, it's also the administrator and developer experience that you need to think about. These are the employees and these are the people making everything run. Sure, the end users kind of pay you and that's where you make your money, but this is where you continue to innovate. This is where you win as an organization. If you make things for your administrators, your developers easier, ultimately they're going to be able to focus on your front-end application. And what this means is a reduced latency of up to 40%. We've actually had reduced latency orders of magnitude, 1x, 2x, taken double-digit milliseconds all the way down to single milliseconds. And this isn't just storage latency, it's the entire application stack, because we're able to collapse the database, the media access app, and the media web server. So for a lot of freemium and ad-based services, this is really important. Let's see. There we go. And this is just one thing we did. I just focused on one use case where we plugged in and for video delivery and image hosting. But we could plug into different CDN apps and user mobile and responsive designs, just depending on how you want to architect your solution. And we plug into the entire media workflow. So your asset management solutions, direct ingest from cameras, encoders, and digital rights management. We have use cases and references for all of these. We support traditional protocols. We do have a new NFS interface that plugs right into all of these protocols or all of these devices. So what you're doing here is essentially eliminating storage silos. You store all your content here. It's completely managed. You can still use your favorite asset management solutions, but this is continuously protected all on commodity hardware. You can go out and get the best deal from HP or Dell or Supermicro or whoever to store, and it's as easy as just plugging in more storage and off you go. You get additional capacity and you also get additional performance, and you can deliver content directly from the storage tier. And this is just an example of some of our media customers. So we have a number of other customers that don't show up here. Department of Defense uses us, Department of Justice, some huge organizations worldwide. But from the media perspective, we're used by NEP, Fox Sports for live broadcasting and streaming, VOD. We're used by social and user-generated content organizations like Ask, Rightmove, which is like a Zillow in the UK, too, and a lot of other IAC portfolio companies. I'm not sure who knows of IAC, but they're a very large conglomerate on the internet. And we're used for long-term archive. So for cultural archives like VAA, which is the Dutch Cultural Archive, they wanted to get down to the economics of tape. But they needed to keep all these cultural assets online. So how do you mix that functionality of keeping everything online while still being at the cost of tape? Can you store it on a cloud service? No, because the costs compound. So from the object storage perspective, object storage really makes sense when you need to keep content long-term, when your content's strategic, when you're keeping it for more than 3 years. After a 3-year kind of analysis, a lot of cloud business models start to break down. Just from a cost perspective, that's when it makes sense to bring it in-house. I think a great example of this is Netflix, right? Netflix started using Amazon Web Services. Ultimately, they started bringing that in-house because it's just more cost-effective to do so. Sure, they need to have more operational resources, but ultimately, if it's strategic to you, you're going to want it in-house. You're going to want to store everything. And even the presentation right before me, right? 4K video is 9 times the size of 720. Is that something, can you handle a 9x increase in your cloud storage bill on the monthly basis? That's a pretty big increase. And that's when it also makes sense to bring your storage in-house and your delivery in-house. And in summary, this is really what Caringo storage, object storage lets you do. Lets you store, deliver, and then monetize. So content producer direct ingest, content viewer direct access, and it really enables freemium and ad-based models. This is where latency is really key. Going back to the dating site, if it takes a second or two for a photo to load, that viewer is going to go somewhere else, just like any content. So this is really key, but in today's world where you need to store everything, you need to find an economical way to do that. So you just can't always use a CDN. There's a time and a place for CDN. But if you're struggling with trying to store all of the content and keep it in perpetuity, or a large amount of the content you create and keep it in perpetuity for a very long time, then we encourage you to take a look at object storage, and we encourage you to come talk to us. We have some of our experts at booth 107. And I'll open it up to questions if anyone has any questions. Yes? We're content agnostic, so you can really store anything you want. And it really goes from a virtual reality perspective, it's just the data rate delivery. We're software, we can store and really store at any rate. We use hardware optimally, so it's based upon the hardware that you store us on. So for VR applications, we suggest using SSDs or solid state devices. But yeah, we can support any content from a storage perspective and delivery perspective. And again, you're interfacing with us over HTTP. So if you have some sort of digital rights management or other solution that you're going through, they kind of plugs directly into us or access the content directly from us. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah, it's a good question. So Ceph and Swift are both open source technologies. They both have the concept of rings and pools. So they have a pretty rigid infrastructure if you take a look at it from that perspective. You need to specify for a specific ring or pool protection method or where you want the data stored. We have a much more flexible solution. We have a parallel infrastructure. So you set the protection method and all the policies with the content itself. So you don't need to specify where it goes. And the benefit there is it's very easy to manage. You can deploy, it's really plug and play deployment. After everything's set up, if you want to expand capacity, expand performance, you just simply plug in another server. So I mentioned the Department of Defense. So they use us for the second largest medical image archive in the world. And the way they use us, they call it pollinator nodes. So they're taking medical images in places where there's no bandwidth, out on the battlefield. They take the x-rays out there, the images out there, they simply bring those boxes and plug them directly into the main cluster when they get back into the US. And that's just the flexibility of our solution. You can do that. Try doing that with a Ceph, try doing that with the Swift. There's also the other open source arguments, right? It's open source isn't free. Open source is free like a puppy is free, right? Anyone who's ever owned a puppy knows a puppy isn't free. But even beyond that, there's a lot of benefits to go with a commercial solution like ours.
And there's one fundamental difference between Swarm and all the other object storage is there's no file system. So it's already more efficient, and it never has any IOPS defined as an object. So you have a zero file.
And that's our CEO, which is why I say. So object storage, so Swarm object storage is not based on a file system. And file systems have inherent scalability issues. It's kind of technical, but when you deal with file systems do have limits, and a lot of the other object stores are based upon Linux file systems, ext3 or ext4, right? They have limits in how much you can store. And in today's world, we have organizations storing billions, getting close to trillions of objects on our solution. And you really need to take that in consideration depending on the scale of your use case. We don't see that too much on the media side, but on the IoT side and the big data side, we definitely start to hit those kind of limits in the billions and trillions of files.
More questions?
All right.